Before you walk through this particular door, I need you to know what is actually on the other side of it. That is the energy that arrived the moment I opened this reading for you today, Virgo, and I want to honor it with the same directness it carried when it came through. This is not a reading meant to celebrate a connection without examining it fully first. This is the kind of reading that asks you to pause, to look clearly, before you give any more of yourself to a situation that deserves your full discernment rather than only your hope. I want to walk you through exactly what Spirit is showing me about this person, what you genuinely need to understand before moving forward romantically, what specific patterns deserve your attention, and what genuine readiness on both sides would actually require. Stay with me through this entire reading because the information here matters and I do not want you to miss any layer of it. Let me describe what I felt the moment this energy opened, because the very first impression carries real signal about the nature of what we are examining. I felt caution rise immediately, not fear exactly, but the specific attentive quality of needing to look more carefully before proceeding. This is not the energy of warning you away entirely from this connection. It is the energy of making sure you walk into it with your eyes fully open rather than carried forward purely by excitement or hope without adequate information. I also felt complexity present in this person's energy, um, layers that are not immediately visible on the surface of who they present themselves to be in the early stages of getting to know someone. This complexity is not necessarily negative. Most people carry complexity, but it does mean that what you have seen so far represents only a partial picture of who this person actually is. I want to talk about what Spirit is showing me regarding this person's patterns because I think this deserves careful, honest examination rather than vague generalities. I am sensing a history of relationships that ended with some degree of unresolved conflict or unfinished business, situations where clean closure did not fully occur before this person moved forward into something new. This pattern is worth understanding because unresolved history has a way of resurfacing in new connections, sometimes in subtle ways that are not immediately obvious until you are already significantly invested. I am also sensing this person carries some difficulty with full emotional transparency, not necessarily dishonesty in the deliberate, deceptive sense, but a tendency to withhold certain truths, certain feelings, certain pieces of their internal experience until circumstances make sharing them unavoidable rather than offering that honesty proactively and early. I want to expand on this further because I think understanding the root of these patterns adds important context. This tendency toward withholding likely developed as a protective strategy somewhere earlier in this person's life, possibly through experiences where full transparency was met with judgment, conflict, or consequences that taught them caution rather than openness as the safer approach to navigating relationships. This does not excuse the pattern indefinitely, but it does help explain why it exists and why it may take genuine time and a sense of safety before this person becomes more naturally forthcoming. I also want to address something about how this pattern of unresolved history might show up specifically in your connection with this person. There is a possibility that certain reactions or sensitivities you encounter, responses that seem disproportionate to whatever immediate situation triggered them, actually trace back to unprocessed feelings from earlier relationships rather than being fully about anything happening directly between you. Recognizing this distinction when it arises can help you respond with more understanding rather than assuming the intensity of a reaction is solely about your current dynamic together. Let me speak to something specific about communication style, because I think this is one of the most practically important pieces of this entire reading. I am sensing this person tends to retreat rather than engage directly when conflict or difficult emotion arises. Rather than working through tension in real time, through honest, sometimes uncomfortable conversation, there is a pattern of withdrawal, of needing significant space before they are able to return to a difficult topic, space that can sometimes stretch longer than what feels comfortable or healthy for the other person, waiting on the other side of that withdrawal. This pattern matters significantly for you specifically, Virgo, because I am sensing you value direct, honest communication, the kind that addresses issues as they arise rather than allowing them to accumulate unaddressed. A significant mismatch in communication style, where one person wants to talk through difficulty immediately and the other needs substantial space before engaging, can create real friction if it is not consciously acknowledged and navigated by both people involved. I want to describe what this friction might actually feel like in practice, because I think specificity helps you recognize it if it occurs. You may find yourself wanting to address a concern or tension immediately while this person becomes quiet, perhaps physically distant for a period, needing time before they can engage productively with what you are raising. From your perspective, this could feel like avoidance, like they are not taking the concern seriously enough to address it promptly. From their perspective, immediate engagement during heightened emotion may feel overwhelming, potentially leading to reactions they would later regret if they were forced to respond before feeling genuinely ready. I want to offer some guidance on navigating this specific mismatch, because I think practical wisdom serves you better than simply naming the pattern without addressing how to work with it. Establishing an agreed upon approach in advance, perhaps a specific signal or phrase this person can use to indicate they need space without it being interpreted as complete avoidance, paired with a mutual commitment to returning to the conversation within a reasonable time frame rather than indefinitely, can help bridge this particular gap between your different natural approaches to processing difficulty. Does this feel like it is connecting to a specific situation in your life right now, Virgo? Is there a particular person you have been considering moving forward with romantically? And does any of what I am describing feel familiar to patterns you have already noticed? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear how this is resonating with your own experience. I want to address something about this person's relationship with vulnerability, because I think it deserves real attention before you move forward. I am sensing genuine fear underneath whatever confident exterior this person presents. Fear connected to being fully known, fully seen, in a way that exposes parts of themselves they have learned to keep carefully guarded. This fear likely developed through earlier experiences, perhaps connected to a previous relationship where vulnerability was met with harm rather than care, perhaps connected to earlier life experiences that taught them full emotional exposure is risky rather than safe. I want you to understand what this means practically. Early in this connection, you are likely to encounter a version of this person that feels accessible, warm, genuinely engaged. As the relationship deepens, as the stakes of genuine intimacy increase, you may notice the same person becoming more guarded rather than more open, a pattern that can feel confusing or even like a step backward if you do not understand the underlying fear driving it. I want to expand on why this particular pattern, increased guardedness as intimacy deepens rather than as it begins, occurs so commonly in people carrying this kind of protective history. Early stages of connection often feel safer precisely because the stakes are lower, less has been invested, and the potential for genuine harm if things do not work out feels more manageable. As genuine emotional investment increases, so does the potential cost of vulnerability, which can trigger increased protective behavior even when, paradoxically, this is exactly the point in a relationship where deeper openness would actually serve the connection's continued growth. I also want to address what you might notice specifically as markers of this increased guardedness, because recognizing them clearly will help you respond with understanding rather than confusion or hurt. This could look like this person changing the subject when conversations move toward deeper emotional territory, offering humor or deflection in moments that call for genuine vulnerability, or simply becoming notably less communicative during periods when the relationship is deepening in ways that would typically call for increased rather than decreased openness. I want to speak to something positive that exists alongside these cautions, because I do not want this reading to feel entirely discouraging without acknowledging the genuine substance present in this connection as well. I am sensing real capacity for growth in this person, genuine willingness to examine their own patterns when these patterns are brought to their attention with care rather than accusation. This is significant because not everyone responds to honest feedback about their relational patterns with openness. I am sensing this person, while currently operating from some of the protective patterns I have described, has the genuine capacity to grow beyond them, given patience, honest communication, and a partner who approaches difficulty with curiosity rather than immediate judgment. Inhale with me for a moment, Virgo. I want to address what entering this relationship with full awareness would actually require from you specifically, because I think your own approach matters as much as understanding this person's patterns. I want you to enter this connection if you choose to move forward with realistic expectations about pacing. Genuine emotional intimacy with this person is likely to develop more slowly than you might initially hope, particularly around their most guarded internal experiences. I want you to prepare yourself for this slower timeline rather than expecting the rapid emotional opening that sometimes characterizes connections with people who do not carry this particular kind of protective pattern. I also want to encourage you to communicate your own needs clearly and early, rather than waiting to see how things naturally unfold. Given what I am sensing about this person's tendency toward withdrawal during difficulty, establishing clear expectations about communication during conflict, before conflict actually arises, may help create a foundation that serves both of you better than discovering this mismatch only after you are already deeply invested. I want to speak to something specific about red flags versus growth areas, because I think this distinction matters significantly here. What I am describing throughout this reading are growth areas, not necessarily disqualifying red flags. There is an important difference between someone who has patterns they are unaware of or unwilling to examine, and someone who has patterns rooted in genuine past wounding, who remains open to growth when those patterns are addressed with care. Everything I am sensing about this person falls into the second category rather than the first, which is meaningful information as you consider whether to move forward. I want you to watch, however, for whether this person demonstrates genuine willingness to engage with these patterns when you bring them up, rather than becoming defensive or dismissive when difficult topics arise. This responsiveness, or lack of it, will tell you significantly more about the genuine potential of this connection than the patterns themselves do in isolation. I want to expand on this distinction with more specific guidance because I think it deserves real attention rather than a brief mention. A genuine growth area shows itself through someone's willingness to take ownership when a pattern is named, even if their immediate behavior does not change overnight. You might notice this person saying something like acknowledging that they recognize what you are describing, even while admitting they are still working on changing the actual behavior. This kind of honest acknowledgement, paired with visible effort over time, distinguishes a genuine growth area from a true red flag. A true red flag, by contrast, tends to show itself through consistent denial that any pattern exists at all, blame redirected toward you for noticing or naming the pattern in the first place, or promises of change that never translate into any observable difference in actual behavior over a reasonable period of time. I want you to use this distinction as your primary tool for evaluating how this connection unfolds, rather than treating the mere existence of challenging patterns as automatically disqualifying on their own. I want to address something about timing here because I think it adds important context to everything else in this reading. I am sensing this person is currently in a period of genuine personal growth, even if that growth has not yet fully resolved the patterns I have described. This timing matters because entering a relationship with someone who is actively working on themselves, even imperfectly, carries different potential than entering a relationship with someone who has made no effort towards self-awareness at all. I want you to consider where this person currently stands in their own growth journey as you weigh whether the timing of this connection serves you well. I want to add something further about timing here because I think it deserves additional consideration beyond simply where this person stands in their own development. I also want you to honestly assess where you currently stand in your own life and your own capacity to extend the patience this connection would require. There may be seasons of your own life better suited to navigating a relationship with these particular complexities than others, periods when your own resources and emotional bandwidth are more available for this kind of patient, gradual building of trust. I want you to consider your own current capacity, honestly, alongside everything you now understand about this person, before deciding whether this is genuinely the right moment for both of you to move forward together. Let me speak to what genuine compatibility would actually require here, beyond simply attraction or initial connection. I am sensing that what would serve this connection best is patience paired with clear boundaries, rather than either extreme of unlimited tolerance for unaddressed patterns or immediate dismissal at the first sign of difficulty. Genuine compatibility with someone carrying the patterns I have described requires a particular kind of partner, someone secure enough in their own worth to not personalize this person's withdrawal during difficulty, while also maintaining clear standards about what consistent, sustained behavior they require over time. I want to expand on what this balance actually looks like in daily practice because abstract guidance alone is not always sufficient. Patience, in this context, means giving this person genuine time to demonstrate growth rather than expecting immediate transformation simply because a pattern has been named once. It means recognizing that change, particularly around deeply rooted protective behaviors, tends to happen gradually rather than instantly, with occasional setbacks along the way that do not necessarily indicate the absence of genuine progress. Clear boundaries simultaneously mean establishing what you genuinely need in order to feel secure and respected within this connection, and being willing to communicate those needs directly rather than simply hoping this person eventually figures them out on their own. It also means being honest with yourself about timelines, recognizing that patience has reasonable limits, and that if significant time passes without any observable movement toward the growth you are hoping to see, that absence of progress is itself important information worth honoring, rather than continuing to explain away indefinitely. I want to speak to your own readiness for this kind of connection because I think it deserves direct address rather than assumption. I am sensing you have done significant work on your own emotional security, work that has prepared you to navigate a connection like this one without losing yourself in the process. This matters because partnering with someone who carries the patterns I have described requires a partner with genuine internal stability, someone who does not require constant external reassurance to feel secure, because reassurance of that intensity may not always be immediately available from this particular person, especially during their more guarded periods. I want to expand on this further because I think it deserves more attention than a brief acknowledgement. The kind of internal stability required here means being able to tolerate this person's occasional withdrawal without immediately spiraling into anxiety about whether the relationship itself is at risk. It means trusting your own worth independently of how consistently this person is able to express their feelings in any given moment, rather than measuring your value through their ability to provide constant reassurance. This is genuinely demanding work, and I want you to honor how much internal development it has likely taken for you to arrive at a place where you could approach a connection like this one with the security it would actually require. I also want to address something about your own needs that deserve equal consideration alongside everything I have shared about this person's patterns. You are not simply being asked to accommodate someone else's growth journey indefinitely without consideration for your own needs being met in return. A healthy version of this connection would involve genuine reciprocity, this person also working to understand and accommodate your need for direct communication and emotional transparency, even as you extend patience for the pace at which their own openness develops. If you find yourself doing all the accommodating while receiving little corresponding effort in return, that imbalance deserves your honest attention regardless of how sympathetically you understand the origins of their patterns. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with the complete picture Spirit shared today. This person carries genuine substance and genuine capacity for growth, alongside real patterns around emotional withdrawal during conflict and difficulty with full vulnerability that developed through earlier experiences. Moving forward romantically with full awareness of these patterns, rather than discovering them only after significant investment, gives you the best chance of navigating this connection successfully if you choose to proceed. Watch for genuine responsiveness when these patterns are addressed directly. Communicate your own needs clearly and early, and trust your own discernment about whether this particular combination of substance and challenge ultimately serves your own well-being and growth. Whatever you decide, you are walking into this with eyes open rather than blind, and that clarity alone is a genuine form of self-protection, regardless of which direction you ultimately choose. If this reading gave you valuable clarity today, please share it with a Virgo who might be considering entering a new relationship and could benefit from approaching it with full awareness. And let me know in the comments how this is landing for your own situation. I read every comment, and I carry your stories with genuine care long after this video ends, holding space for whatever decision you are weighing right now. Until next time, Virgo. Knowledge before commitment is not pessimism. It is simply the kind of care your own heart deserves before you give it fully to someone else.